No problem. Did what Linda said. On the other side of identity, and this is really cool seeing return faces, some new faces, and I think this is the fourth time we've done this, and I'm really surprised, given all the how many people are zoomed out, that this is still a good thing. Five, sorry, my bad. Anyway, so keep going,
Thanks,
Julie.
Bill. Thanks, Bill. And talk about that. We are zoomed out, aren't we? At least I know I am. Too much time on the technology. So we're here today to talk about bringing our values to life. And it's a great topic. It's actually the third in a series that we've done on values, and it's probably the most important one because this is where most companies go wrong with their values. So my first question is for each of you. Who in this group, and just by show of hands, let me know, has a formal set of values developed for their company? So who has the formal set of values? So it looks like pretty much most of you. And a couple of you do not have a set of values. So first, I want to ask a question, and again, we're going to do laser conversation here, not long stories, but if you could tell me what the primary purpose of your values are for your company, and if you could say that in a couple seconds. For example, values in my company are a beacon for how we behave, how we make decisions, and how we move forward in life, and they tell everyone, our customers, our suppliers, and our employees, what we're all about. So that's what they do for us in our business. If you could share something equally concise, and feel free to say what he said or what she said so we can keep the conversation going. So who'd like to volunteer what values are doing for their business? Go ahead, Barry.
Hi, Julia. I'm going to agree with you 100%, but I'm going to add something, and that would be that this cascades over into people's personal lives so that they're consistent and genuine in all aspects. So
Nice.
As you mentioned, it creates a context by which you make choices and decisions and behaviors, both professionally as well as personally as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's part of the values too, is they draw people who are like-minded to them to your business so that you don't have to feed them to people. And if we can incorporate that into our hiring and selection process, it's really useful. Okay, who else has values and would like to share what purpose they serve for your business? And Dave, I know, go ahead, Blaine, and then Dave, I know EOS is big on values, so I'd like you to share your thoughts too. Go ahead, Blaine.
I think it just builds a baseline for our culture and a shared mindset. So if you have a simple set of values that everybody can see and pay attention to, it kind of gives the underpinning for the company culture.
Also, thank you. Dave?
So the primary use of core values with our clients is to harness them to attract people that are going to fit the culture and repel people that are not going to fit the culture. I actually believe in what Barry indicated, which is to the extent that you are clear on what your own core values are and you repeat them often to other individuals, it touches your humanity because you allow other people to call you out when you don't live up to them.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that? No? All right, so go ahead, Linda. Sorry.
I just want to say that I love that it touches on your humanity. And that's a great phrase because we struggle with that. We just keep saying we want to find the heart and soul of your brand. And I really like that phrase. And the idea of cascading into your personal life that Barry mentioned. That's how they are authentic, right? When they're really true to you and they resonate with you. So I don't know if I'll have time to get to this, Julie, but maybe I'm going to write on my, we talk a lot about attracting people, but we found when we've said to people who want to work with us, these are our core values. Do you agree? They go,
yeah.
So that's the challenge, is how do you really know that those resonate with them?
Yeah, now I will tell you that one of my core values focuses on thinking, it's on discovery and thinking outside the box. And so I don't automatically assume that people have to believe 100% of my values when they walk in the door, but I have to have some evidence that they're open to learning and at least intrigued by them. And I say that because if you were to look at who I am today compared to who I was in my 20s or 30s, you would see a lot of things look very different. So people are learning and they're in process, and that's a big value that we promote, is that people are on a journey, and judging their journey is not my job. So I do like to keep some openness there for people to well, and I will say that my values are non-traditional as well. So, but for people to, they haven't even thought of some of the things that are listed in our values. So I like to keep some windows open there. Any other thoughts about what values are doing for your business? Okay. I've been working with values and organizations for more than 3 decades. And one of the things I'd like to talk about today is, for me, when I teach values and I help businesses incorporate them into the lifeblood of their business, I have what I would consider sort of a master plan. And I'd like to share that, and I'd like to see your reactions to it, but also what you would add to, or what you include in your master plan. So my master plan, when I help leaders answer the question, how do I make values alive in my business? I talk about 4 things. Your values need to be a first thought and never an afterthought. And so that means that constant reinforcement and clarification is really essential. You know, I'm sure you've all been in businesses where you've seen their values up on the wall and the plaques and the posters and on their website, and then you don't notice them when you're inside the business. So they also have to permeate every aspect of your business, from your strategies, the products you produce, the services you provide, the way you communicate and make decisions. And I think we've already talked about that, but that's step 2 of our master plan. Step 3 is you need to have ongoing engagement. You need to have everyone in your workforce continually engaged in the values and how they're showing up. And step 4 is immediacy and remediation and reinforcement. Too often organizations are slow to act when something goes wrong and from a values perspective, and slow to act when something goes right. So those are the 4 sort of principles in my master plan. What are some things that you're doing in your business to help ensure that values are understood as the foundational framework for the way you work together and the services you provide?
You know, what I do is I have a, let's see, I have a mission, a goal, and a vision statement. And that kind of, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
Well, a lot of people can have those, James, but they just spend a lot of time or a little time developing them, but they don't live them out. So how do you reinforce the mission and the vision and the values statement in your business? Are there any tricks you've learned or tactics that have worked?
Well, just keep on the course and keep ethical and honest. But
Yeah.
what you do is do something dishonest and lie about your company or something. That would destroy everything. Right.
Okay. All right. Good. Barry, I see your hand up there.
So Julie, in all forms of communication, I believe that I do my best to communicate my vision and values, whether I'm networking or whether it's on my website or whether it's on my LinkedIn profile. But there is something that I do every single day, Monday through Friday, and that is I blog my Quotable Coach blog. So when I send that out 5 days a week, the quote kind of resonates with my thoughts and values. The commentary resonates with my thoughts and values. And the kinds of questions that I ask are to allow the person reading the blog post to explore those for themselves and apply them. So there's this consistency of the messaging of this is who I am, this is what I put out there. Even my book, The Quotable Coach, Daily Nuggets of Practical Wisdom, we assembled 365 of those. So one of the things that I do in my business development effort when I'm able to meet with people is I will literally give them a copy of my book and say, if you like this book with the quotes and the commentaries and the exercise, you'll probably like me. So there's a congruency of saying, how do I try this person on? Not just what you say, but in all your outreach activities.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Anyone else? Bill?
Well, yes. Bill, do you have the flashcards there? We made flashcards of our core values. I was inspired, and I've mentioned Dina Dwyer on previous calls. She starts every meeting. If there's more than two, if there's 3 or more people in a meeting, they have to say their core values before the meeting starts. So they're saying them all the time. Well, we did that with a project management meeting on Monday, just once a week, and it does take time. But so we have the flashcard. So Bill, you could show the first side and then the second. So that's kind of a reminder. And then you flip it over, and it has.
I don't know if it's backwards on your screen, but it's backwards on mine. So
No, it's right on mine.
And then we've got 1 through 6, and when we start our huddles, we have what's a win from today, what's a core value that we can implement, top priority and top need. But core values are woven in on regular basis for us.
It's a core value, yeah, shout outs. You saw somebody doing that. The cool thing about that is we get tested too. So we'll give it to one of our team members and they can do those with us, and we should be whipping those out and not stuttering with them. So that was the challenge, to make sure we learned all 3 sentences, because the core values are very short and simple, and then they get a little bit more elaboration, and then maybe an even further one. So the cool thing is when we have one designer is very quiet and hardly shares her ideas at all. So she had something difficult to tell us last week, and she goes, so core value, be real, communicate with honesty and clarity. I have to tell you guys something. So it helped her. But I really appreciate Dave's comment about, and you mentioned that too, Julie, with the immediacy, remediation, and enforcement is being correctable. So being challenged by our own core values, because none of us are perfect, we go off course. So that was something that I really want to be open with our team. I don't know how it really works though. If they're really saying, you say you want it.
You know, it's interesting. I just had a conversation about this morning with someone else, and we were talking about, I guess, what some people would call confrontation. I call it remediation. Some people call it, gentle guidance, whatever it is. But one of the things that I found that we sometimes look at the notion of correcting someone as a negative, as a confrontation. And I think one of the things that works really well with us and our values is something that's more like redirection. To assume the best of people and to give them a chance to redirect and move in a different direction. Because I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning saying, oh, I just want to blow up our values when I get into work today. Let me just be a complete jerk. I don't think that's how it works. But I do think we all, including myself, step on landmines that we weren't looking for and expecting. And redirection is a really helpful process. But redirection as well as reinforcement, if we don't do it immediately, the impact just incrementally goes down. So I love the leaders that I work with who I call culture warriors, who have just practices in place where if a value infraction occurs, they assume the best of the person, they give them the benefit of the doubt, but they jump on it right away. And the same thing goes for reinforcement. Dave, I keep calling on you because I know EOS values, core values are built into your process. What are some things, can you talk a little bit about some things that you do to help leaders who, especially leaders, because I'm going to suspect that every leader you work with didn't come to you saying, oh, please, Dave, teach me how to bring humanity into my business. Many leaders who I work with hear that and they just think, man, I didn't come for a therapist or a nun. I came for a business consultant. So what are some ways that you help your leaders understand how to make their values a first thought and not an afterthought?
So the key is, once they're discovered and they're clarified, is to hire, fire, recognize, and reward on the basis of those core values. Because the core values ultimately are the handful of rules that you're going to live by within your organization. So you must repeat them often. And you also have to walk the talk yourself. One of the biggest challenges that I've had with leadership teams when they're discovering their core values, because they always exist, they just aren't really clarified, is a tendency to go towards bland. So one of the things that I try to, I would say, it almost push them to be a little bit more provocative. So for example, growth oriented, a lot of companies will use that. A better way to express it is grow or die. So now all of a sudden I've created a core value that is particularly authentic to one organization that might not be exactly the same in another organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and grow or die is a truly provocative, and it's also really easy to remember. And that's, you know, I mean, when you know, you're in the heat of the battle, so to speak, grow or die becomes a mantra that people immediately know what you're talking about and can move forward on.
Pretty macho, you know, it's pretty tough. Yeah. Jeez, take it easy. You don't have to die. It's
Okay.
only a company. You don't have to die.
Anyone else have things you do in your master plan to make sure your values are kept alive and well and really making a difference in your company?
One of the things that I can mention is that I bought a 60-year-old company here that from the original owners, and let's just say the core their values don't match mine. But the biggest thing you need to do is, I haven't had time to get them documented, but I am trying to communicate them regularly through my actions and direction to the team, and you have to be consistent. If you're not consistent with them, they are not going to work.
Kenneth, what are they? How come they conflict with you? Are they dishonest or something?
In some regards, yeah. Yeah, it was, it's a smaller company. It's what I would call an old school manufacturing type mentality. Every man for himself. That's not the way that I've grown other companies, and it won't be the way we grow this one.
Yeah.
So did you?
Could I ask a question? May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm curious about this idea of, like, when we onboard an employee, what was it like to go through the purchasing and the assimilation of this company in the first place, if there was a potential aversion for their behaviors or their actions or their slipperiness or whatever it would be? How did you find that, you know, this is a win-win for both of us when you found that their natural tendencies were contrary to your own?
Well, through the due diligence process, when I bought the company, I interviewed the employees, and let's just say that the company has a lot of has a lot of potential. Okay, and they have a lot of talent. The main thing that they lacked was leadership from the previous owners. So I saw an opportunity to change the culture of the company. And, you know, Linda and Doug, you guys, and Bill, you guys know me a little bit anyhow. And I don't want my customers want to deal with me. Sorry. And getting just, I bought the company because number one, I enjoy fixing companies and growing them. And this is an opportunity to do it. I've made quite a few changes though in the personnel here. And
Did you fire anybody? That's what I would do.
yep, I did several. Out of all the leadership team, there's
Learn.
one left. So, yep.
That's good.
Okay.
All right. Ken, did you adapt or change the values, or are you still working with the original set?
Well, I guess if you want to say that they had an original set,
Okay.
we're changing them on the fly. But it's real important to me to get them documented. And I've done this at much larger companies before. It's a little bit, we're a small company, we're like maybe a dozen people. It's a little bit different running this company than it is running a company with 6, 8 plants and, several hundred employees. But it's fun because there's much more engagement for me. And, it's all about getting it set up right and growing it. And that's going to be the fun part.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the company needs leadership and you're changing the culture. And of course, values are foundational to the culture change. So you're definitely on the right track. I think you know that. Okay, so what I've talked about so far is kind of been about like the strategic process that you will use to bring values to life in your business and keep them there. And then there are a lot of tactics that I've seen people use, and I've just been amazed at how brilliantly different leaders have come up with tactics for incorporating values into their business. I'd like to share one that I've used and see if we could collect a list of ideas that you have that maybe others aren't using that could support your process. So right now, my team is very small, and we don't do this anymore. But previously, when my team was quite a bit larger, I had something called Fail Forward Friday. And it was so much fun. We would meet for lunch, and we would talk about a missed opportunity that occurred during the week. And we had an award for winning the Fail Friday Forward Award. And so what it did was it encouraged people to accept that mistakes happen. We all make them. And we would just celebrate them. And so we would talk about, what the situation, what we did that we recognized after the fact didn't work, wasn't a true representation of who they wanted to be, and what they learned from that. And so what it did for our culture was support our value of learning and growing, and treating mistakes as learning experiences. So it was really fun. People really loved it. And never in a million years did I think I'd have a whole bunch of professionals who are all somewhat competitive with each other coming and saying, I want to win the award this week. So, really going deep with hiccups that they encountered along the way. So what's a sample tactic that you've used in your organization to engage your workforce and to bring values conversations into your workplace?
Well, one thing I did, and I guess everybody just, when I was a design supervisor for an engineering firm, I took everybody out on Friday and paid for everything, and everybody had a good time for lunch. We partied down. And in that, you have a group cohesion, and everybody tells you what's going on. Everybody, it's what it's all about. Everybody get together socially.
Okay, so sort of some social team building.
Yeah, yeah, every Friday, man. Everybody
All right.
had their friends come over and everything. It was wild.
Okay, great,
A lot of fun.
great. Other thoughts, other things people have done or are doing that is helping to bring their values to life on a day-to-day basis? Go ahead, Barry.
Well, again, not to leave any space left open. One of the things that I do with all my coaching clients is I actually teach them to coach themselves. So a technique that I use is called the pivot point, and it has 3 steps to it. The first step is to assess the current reality of what is or isn't working and go deep there. The second part is what's your goal, what's your objective, what's your values, where are you headed? And that establishes the creative tension. And then the third part is what actions can and will you take to go from step 1 to step 2. So I like to kind of make a little tongue in cheek and say, if you can count to 3, what is the reality? What is a vision? What is a plan? And then that iterative nature, internalizing that pivoting process day in and day out. So you can pivot moment to moment, day to day, week to week. And by being more aware of where we are, where we're going, what we're doing, then we can make adjustments to do more of some things and less of others and start new things and stop others.
Great, beautiful. Thank you.
I think it's a challenge because I'm thinking.
Linda, we've got a lot of background noise there.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes. That was magical.
I was wishing upon a star that my service would be connected. I really struggle with not putting the core values aside. I believe very strongly in them, but not letting them, so they come to the forefront when we build them into a process. And we want to be, they do pop up the more we build them into the process, saying those flashcards, repeating them when we're going through our day, those will come to mind. But in terms of actually integrating them in, or the Fail Friday Forward, our core value is learning and growing. We learn from our mistakes. So what can we do to do that? That kind of thinking we don't have. So I almost feel like as leaders, we need to challenge ourselves. I remember when I was raising our kids and they were little, I could get caught up in the day to day. And I wanted to serve. I wanted to make sure I was serving and thinking outside my family. So I called, every Tuesday was a servant day. And I needed to do something to serve others outside my own little circle. So whether that was calling, encouraging, visiting someone in the hospital, helping someone move, I wanted to make sure every Tuesday, because that was something that I valued. So I built that into my structure of my life. I don't feel like we're doing that with our core values, with our team, really thinking about how we can infuse those into the behaviors, actions, processes of our business. So as leaders, to be challenged maybe once a quarter, well, first of all, be passionate about them and get them codified, get those written. And I think Dave's comment about we go toward the blah or the bland. I wrote a blog post maybe a couple of years ago about blah, 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 core values, integrity, follow through. So getting creative is super huge. So codifying those, when you can say them and repeat them and they're transportable, they can transport from your brain and your mouth to someone else's brain and their mouth over and over and over again, and they're easily shared in your organization. I think that creates a strong culture or foundation to build on those. So get them codified, got that. Okay, doing a little bit, but I want to do more or be challenged to do more.
I like that. Blah, blah, bland. There you go. So combining the thoughts of the two of you. So what are you guys doing from that leadership perspective to keep your values exciting and meaningful to your team? Tim, go ahead.
No, actually, I was just exiting. I have a client meeting right now, so just waving goodbye. Thank you. I can watch the recording. Thank you, Linda, for recording. Appreciate
Good to see
it.
you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I don't really have something in particular that I want to point to as something we're doing along these lines, but I want to point to a hurdle that a lot of us as leaders, I've seen a lot of leaders not even be aware of it. And I try very hard to pay attention to it, which is when we talk about things like core values and mission and vision, and we're sharing them with people on our team, we're hearing them in our own head, and we're hearing them from the perspective of a leader or someone who has an ownership stake in the organization. And the people that you're sharing that information with are going to respond the way they think they should respond. And you're not going to be able to change that. That's the way that's the way humans operate. So I think it's very important for us to get outside of our own heads and try to put ourselves in the shoes of the people who are hearing the message. How are they hearing the message? If you were in their shoes, what would you really be hearing? Don't look for their response to what you're saying. Of course they're going to say yes. It's their job. They're responding to their boss, right? And even if you have a great, a level set relationship with those individuals, which we try to keep a very flat hierarchy here. Everybody's on the same team. I still send the paychecks. So at the end of the day, how do you, if you think your values and your mission and your vision are being received in one way, stop, get out and put yourselves in the shoes of the employee. Look at what their role is every day, what they have to deal with every day, how they interface with your customers, and try to hear it from their perspective. So I don't have a magic bullet on how to do that, but I know we have to be cognizant of it all the time.
Yeah. Well, most of you have go ahead, Catherine.
One of the things that I've always do with my clients is, since I'm in the business for public relations and trying to make people look good, I always have to make sure that the clients, know what the truth is and ensure that what I'm sending out about their company is accurate and truthful. So I actually have them sign a letter of agreement stating that the information that they will give me is truthful and is accurate. And before I send anything out to the media, I have them look at it and initial it just to make sure, just to bring them back. I've had clients call me and say, oh, something really bad happened and, it's a crisis, and they panic and they say, can you make a bad thing look good? And what I always bring them back to is I say, first you have to own the mistake. You have to apologize for it, and then talk to people and show them how you're going to fix it. So once you calm them down and set them straight on a path, they seem to have a sense of relief knowing that they have promoted themselves in an honest and truthful way, and that the situation's actually going to improve, and moving forward, they're going to feel a lot better about themselves.
That's it. I think that's a great way to communicate what you stand for. There are other PR people who have no qualms about spinning and riding that line of the truth. And so what you're stating up right away is, we'll get you to your end game, but we won't do it by being deceptive. So a perfect example how values reflect how you do business. Thanks. Ken.
Yeah, no, I think that Catherine brought up a great point. I think it's so important that you're consistent and honest, because core values ultimately build trust, not just within your team, but with your customers as well. And that serves you for years to come. And they take on a life of their own if you set them up right and you have ownership of them by your team. And it not only do they trust you more, but you trust them as well. And it gives you peace of mind as you move forward.
Yeah, I think congruence is one of the foundational things that will make or break the success of your values. And that's really what you're talking about, is if you establish them, be congruent with them. And Blaine, you brought up another thing, which is that whole piece of employee engagement. I actually have only created values with input from the workforce. And I think that helps get that other perspective. But I have a client who meets with his, by more than one client, but one that I worked with recently, who meets with his team every single month, and just purely for the purpose of looking at the values and how can we up level, what's happening right now, and where do we want to stand or be on that. And that also is a great way to help your team understand, or to get their perspective on the values and understand how they perceive them, because a lot of times there's misunderstandings about what the values look like. So you might, have a value that relates to how you treat your customers. I know when I worked with Chuck Muir, there was a value of the customer's always right after you've educated them, which was really a tricky thing, but he was very credible in the way he talked about it. But it was really hard to spread that values downward, because for your average server or a busboy or cook or hostess, that's a deep concept. The customer is right after we educate them. So do you get in their face and straighten them out and then say, okay, now you're right? So sometimes values can be confusing for our workforce, and they just require some continual learning about it. I have another client who does something just, I think it's the coolest thing. He collects videos of his employees talking about values, and these values, bring them everywhere. They use them all the time. They're shared within the whole workforce, and that too helps get that employee perspective, and also teaches from employee to employee. So it's a great way to sort of foster the message from to get the employee's level or version of the values, the way they show up. And one of the things I've observed, and he's observed as well, is that having employees promote the value to other employees is oftentimes much more effective than all the signs in the world and all the leadership prompting in the world. So it always starts with leaders and keeps going with leaders, but that employee-to-employee contact is really useful. James?
Yes, one thing I always use, because I work with contractors, and I'm not paying them myself. But I have a book. I go by a book, and if everybody believes in that book, we're in business. So they have to study and really know and believe in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or Think and Grow Rich for Women by Sharon Lecter. And the main value is a burning desire to make money. And that's the main thing if you're in that company. You got to make net profit. You're not in there, but you have to be altruistic at the same time. But that's the way the ball game is. Because if you accumulate a lot of money, life is a lot easier.
Okay.
Well, I've also heard it said that, so James and I have gone around in that conversation too about the money and the purpose.
Yeah, sure.
So if we were doing a branding workshop with a company. They were partners of 3. It was a small web design company, tech company, digital marketing, and they had 15 employees. And their vision, mission, purpose was get bigger and make this many, figures.
Yeah.
Right. But I said to them, I said, you're young, you're in your early 30s, and you reach that goal, then what?
Well,
I could picture you guys here 10 or 15 years from now, sitting around the same
take 10 years off.
table, and you're fat cats, and what are you proud of? So they kind of got the slap on the face, I need a V8 moment. And we dug down, like, why did you start doing this? And it's getting back to, I think what Barry was saying about the personal, it's personal. Why did you start this? What was important? And they got to, we're just writing words on the board. Like, well, I could create something out of nothing. I could make it different. I could change things. I could go into the world. I could get on my computer at 12 years old and do these things. So by the end of the time, so they're doing digital marketing for manufacturing companies. And so we looked at the CEO and said, you just had a baby. So how would you like to be able to, when your son is 15 years old, be driving by and you see this beat up old closed down manufacturing plant? And you say, you see that company? I wanted to help them. I wanted to help them transform, but they didn't want to change. This company over here with the new trucks and the new building, they're making things, they're helping the economy in Michigan. Lives are changed. Look at the community, you got a new softball field. And we did that. We helped them transition and change. And all of their faces just went, wow, yeah, I get that. Isn't that a lot more motivating? And of course you have to make money. We have to be profitable, or else we're not going to reach that vision. So okay, so now that's your vision. What are the values that you're going to need to be consistent with that? It was kind of interesting. They wanted to go back again to their core values and go, okay, now we're getting it, like banging on all cylinders here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. One time I made a lot of money in the stock market, and I took almost 7 years off just to party down. Didn't do anything, so you're right. You have to have, I said, I better get busy, right? Doing something for humanity.
Christina.
I have a similar story to Linda's. I was helping a restaurant who was having issues with their employees not really doing their job. We'll put it that way. And so we had a meeting with them, and we talked about the values of the company and why the company was there and why they were there. But I made them tell us why they were there. So I had like a chalkboard and was like, okay, so why do we have customers? And then they gave me ideas. And then we keep those up there and talk about, well, what happens if a customer has a bad experience? And then they say, well, blah, blah, blah. And say, okay, well, we can't get this then, can we? So what happens when we make good experiences? And then they told me that, and they were getting more and more excited the more that they understood that the reason why they have to do the job that they're doing is so that everything on the board that they wanted was going to happen instead of the opposite.
Yeah.
So they were the same way. They were all, oh yeah, I get it now. And they were all excited. It made them more excited about their jobs, and they did a better job for a while. And then we had to have another meeting, but it worked. You got to it goes back to the reminding people about the core values and getting them. Yeah. They have to be reminded from time to time. And there was even, we had a contest about just quiz each other throughout the day, like as you're doing whatever, and say, hey, what is this? Hey, what's that? And so they were doing that for a while, and it was really engaging and really fun.
Yeah, that employee engagement is so important to making this thing work. What I loved about what you did is you didn't tell them anything. You let them discover it on their own. And discovery is such a magical thing for employee engagement, because it makes sense immediately when they figure it out themselves. So,
right. And they think it's because it's their words that they put up there, they think, oh, well, they remember it more, instead of someone saying, you have to do this, and this is why this. When you bring it out of them, it helps tremendously.
Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, what are you seeing your people doing what kind of tactics are your people doing as they execute their strategies around values?
So core value call-outs is big. And I'm part of a community of 350 people around the world who do the same thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
We're all connected on Slack. So we use Slack every day to make core value call-outs for other members in the community when somebody exhibits one of the core values. But more specifically for clients, in the past couple of months during COVID, one client that deploys nurse practitioners into post-acute facilities all over the country. That's a very hazardous job, particularly in April. So those core value call-outs were critical for them to, so we say, navigate what was really a treacherous environment.
Nice, very nice. Hey, have any of you used or heard of any kind of apps? I know that I have a couple clients that will use text messaging to send messages about core values. and reinforce them on a regular basis. But have any of you encountered any kind of app that allows you to communicate more broadly to a workforce around values?
If you're on Microsoft Teams, there's a whole variety of apps that allow you to do that.
Okay.
They fit different platforms differently in terms of what your internal structure is, but you can create your own within Teams, or you can use external apps that plug into Teams to do it. And we're starting to see a lot more. I mean, you're a Slack user, that's great. Slack's very similar in terms of its cohesiveness for the organization. But there's a lot of bolt-on apps that fit into the platform where you do your work. Because if it's something separate that you have to go to get that feedback, it's not going to get used as much. But if it's in the line of your daily work, your business apps, then it's going to be much more effective.
Yeah. Now, are there apps that are automated, Blaine, that you can sort of stack them in advance? Because I know that's one of the struggles leaders I work with have, is trying to manifest a message off the top of their head that's meaningful every day. Is there a way to automate that so it releases them over time?
Yes, and if you'll allow my old man memory to get back to you with names of them, I actually have clients using them today, but the names are escaping me. So
Okay.
I will shoot you something after the meeting.
Great, thanks.
I'm not sure if you mean like in terms of like, the one that comes to mind that I know that I use a lot. If you have like a Facebook group with your employees or something, there's a platform called Edgar, used to be called Meet Edgar, and you can schedule things to go in there, and it will recycle the post too, so that in case you want a certain amount of, or yeah, you could just schedule it and it'll recycle it for you. So it's like a set it and forget it thing. But that's more social media. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
The one that comes to mind is Kudos, which also has a bolt-on to Teams.
Kudos has a what to Teams?
They have a bolt-on to Teams, so you can just add it as an app and then pre-configure it so that employees can use it back and forth. And there's a couple others, like I said, I'll get them to you.
Okay, great. So we've talked about some things that can sideline our values, and we've talked about things like, which is in my experience the most common, is you create them, you post them, and you forget them. To me, that's the number one thing. We've talked about having blah, blah, or bland values, which most of you already have your values, but sometimes, and I've done this myself, in fact, very recently, looking at my values from a different way of communicating them. So maybe a different label that is more relevant without changing the essence of them. And I've actually added a few values in the last couple of years, just based upon, the world's pretty different today than it was 30 years ago when I started my business. So what are some things that you have observed that have challenged your values in the workplace, or challenged people engaging with them, or disengaging? And one of the challenges that I've had a lot of my clients come up with recently is cynicism and skepticism, because they work for so many companies where they had their values and they used it in their recruiting process, and they went blah, 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 and then they get there and it's like crickets. So that cynicism and skepticism is really a pretty formidable foe. Are there things that you've observed in either working with your clients or working within your business that you feel are surefire ways to derail the lifespan of your values? Go ahead, Doug.
I haven't been saying much because we have core values that are intrinsic over the last 20 years, but they haven't been identified by the ownership of the company. the employees, and so I'm like a baby compared to what you guys are doing here. So
hopefully you're picking up a few tips.
So yeah, but one thing that comes to mind is if one of your values is your employees, which I think every company needs to have that. If your ownership makes decisions during a crunch time like COVID and lets them go after 15 years because of a financial thing, what does that say to the rest of the employees? I mean, so when the rubber hits the pavement, we got to live the value, but it's got to be accepted by the ownership of the company, or you just let the air out of your tires and you have nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the middle, running the company, but I don't own it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a sticky spot to be in.
I think, Doug, what you were saying, that just run through, I wrote this down after Blaine was talking about what are they hearing? And that was just a brand new thought to me, to put myself in their shoes. As an employee of companies, I'd never ever had anyone in leadership tell me about the core values and how they want to live them. I never experienced that from that perspective. So I'm thinking they're going to watch you. That's what they're going to start doing, is watching according to their interpretation of what you said. So did they really understand? Am I really communicating what I meant? So some of these ideas, in fact, I'm looking at the time, it's 10:58. We want to stop on time. I'm thinking that could be a future topic, is that congruity, or how the employees are seeing, reading, understanding. Some of the ideas already were just with Christina's idea of having people say things themselves. It would be cool to do something where they have to redefine the values or put the value statements into their own words, so that they're internalizing it, or you're making sure they understand. But I know we need to wrap up this call and thank everybody for joining us. Julie, do we want to do one key takeaway, or people drop off as they need to?
Yeah, we can do that.
Anyone head off, and then if you need to drop off, we really appreciate you joining us. It's always, the group changes from month to month, and every single time we see brilliant people on here and hear brilliant things.
Except for Janeki. Hey, I want to say one thing before I leave. I got to say one thing, right? These books are terrific. I got them from Identity Graphics, right? Brand launch, and the workbook. I would suggest it to everybody. Terrific, only 24 bucks.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Barry, did you have a takeaway you want to share?
Yeah, one of the takeaways I have, we're fortunate to have my little grandchild here with us for a little while. And they say that the best coaching, whether it's in business or whether it's in your personal life, is a good example. So if you want to teach somebody about love, be loving. If you want to teach people about generosity, be generous. So the idea that all of us, from wherever we are in whatever community we're part of, we get to set an example, and we get to live our own visions. And hopefully people are just watching and say, I admire that person, or I want to be like that person, or I can express that similarly myself. So there's always something that we can do personally or professionally to coach folks, even if we're not even saying it. Just act upon those things, set a good example, and hopefully, they pick up the vibe and see that for themselves.
Okay, great. Thanks. Christina, did you want to share a takeaway?
Yeah, so I mean, we implement EOS in our company. And so like, it's not just about communicating and reviewing and trying to get people involved in your core values. But I really liked what Dave said about their rules to live by, because I never really thought of it that way. It's just kind of like, I just thought, okay, this is who we are and this is, what we're about. But I think I liked the way he put it with rules to live by.
Okay, great. Thanks. James?
Oh, I would say this is that I deal with entrepreneurs that I don't know if they have employees and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I would suggest to everybody about values is always pay your bills. Always pay you. Don't forget the people you owe money to, or the people who owe money to you, or you owe money to, because that's the best way that you can ruin your reputation. Because it gets.
All right, great.
Right.
Thanks. Dave?
So one final thought, and it is that you become what you tolerate. So not necessarily from my EOS life, but from my leadership life, I made the mistake of allowing high performers to stay in the organization, even though they violated core values. And that will destroy the culture of an organization.
Thank you. Yep. Bill?
That's good stuff, David. Yeah, the idea that there are rules to live by. I think what's been resonating as we've been talking is the idea of authenticity. You know, if you're just slapping up some core values because you should and everybody does, it's going to resonate hollow with those who you're trying to bring on and those who you're trying to build into the culture. But they need to be internalized. And I guess that ascension to realizing, hey, these need to be authentic, this needs to be real, and how woven they are within your brand, it creates your culture. It is that embodiment. Those core values allow that embodiment to form and grow and morph and impact others, because it creates the culture, and it also it communicates the character of your business. So good stuff, you guys. Thank you. And then last plug for Barry's book. I tried to get it up there earlier, but a lot of wisdom, a lot of time, a lot of insight in that thing. So thank you guys for joining and for heading.
Lane, takeaway?
I have nothing pithy to say.
Nothing pithy to say.
This was a good event. Thank you for putting it on. And I picked up a lot of good ideas.
Good. Thanks. Doug?
Just the importance of the big picture here is just obviously how important core values are to the whole essence of your company. And that's kind of why I'm here, is to bring us down the road to a better place in that area. I mean, like I said, we're baby steps here and need to get further, but I appreciate all your thoughts from the experts.
Right. Ken?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Consistency is very key with this. Ownership of the employees is key. And what goes along with that also is accountability. It's very easy sometimes to try and accept improper behavior because of other problems that taking action would create. But ultimately, that sends the wrong message through the entire organization and can to your customers. You have to really live the core values and enforce them in a even kind manner as best you can.
Yeah, it's a real credibility hit if when you find yourself in crisis or in a really bad situation to not support your values because it's inconvenient or creates other issues. Linda, want to close us?
Yeah, Julie, I want to thank you for your just diving in, covering this, prepping for the call. Julie is my question queen. I just made that up like just now. She asks the best questions. In our first conversation, she's asking these questions like, those are great questions. Then we had lunch, I'm like, can you teach me how to do that? So I really appreciate you, Julie, heading this up and helping us think this through in a structured way. Thank you so much for just
my pleasure.